police don't move, that other officer might be under a lot of stress and turn, and I don't have to react as fast because I have cover, and that might save his life and mine.
Okay, every Latino male or black male that we confront with a gun is not necessarily a criminal. It could be a fellow police officer, it could be an officer with the Drug Enforcement Agency and FBI and so on.
Be professional. Like I said, somebody's life is involved, and it could be mine too.
A challenging officer should always seek cover first.
And with authority, yell, scream, what they have to do to get his attention. Police, don't move.
Someone tells you, if it's a police officer telling you, police don't move, you stay still.
And most important, to think before and during a police action. Police actions turn sour when we stop thinking.
I'd hate to be in a situation where another officer got injured because of my tactics or my partners, or anybody in any agency because of bad tactics. It's got to be a terrible feeling to go home at night and second guess yourself, boy, this guy could still be walking around tomorrow on a beat, or he wouldn't be laying in a hospital, his wife and kids, all because of my bad tactics and my bad judgment.
Cops are all out here as one team, and we got to act as one team, and we all got to look out for each other's safety.
Back in the 1970s, it was untraditional to have a police officer with long hair or a beard. Not so untraditional today. So the differences existed. Now, when we see our police officers today, they go to the outer limits of appearance, the fringe elements of society, to show that they're not police officers. That's what their role as undercover and plainclothes officers is all about. About 20 years ago, I was on a stakeout right at this station, 23rd Street and Eli Avenue. And shortly after 7 p.m., the booth got robbed by a guy who had done about 24 other booth robberies. My partner and I came out. We put the situation under control after some gunfire. The perpetrator, the bad guy in the situation, was shot during the course of the booth robbery. And in calling this in and making the notifications, I let them know that the situation was under control. However, a little while later, the sirens began blaring, and I heard the responding units coming. And I went over to the stairway to try and slow them down a bit. And as I did this, one of the responding police officers tripped on the lower landing right back here. And at that point, I went over to help him. And I looked up at the top of the stairway, and I realized that his partner had made me the target. I knew instantaneously what the officer at the top of the stairs was thinking. What he saw coming down that stairway was his partner who had slipped and fallen briefly on the stairway, was a guy who didn't look like a cop approaching him. I was only going over to help, but I knew that's not what he was thinking, especially when I saw him start to take aim. So it's incumbent on both sides of the street to take all the care that's possible. If you're a plainclothes officer who's out there, you would have realized that every other uniform officer is not going to instantaneously recognize you in these situations of great crisis and turmoil, that it's your obligation to realize that, just as it's the obligation of the uniform officer to know that you can't pick the cops out anymore. The question of slowing down our response time, that's not what this is all about. What this is about is a realization that you've got to make very quick judgments in the field. We want to give you all the training that we can to make those judgments as effectively and as safely as possible. It's your life and the life of fellow police officers.
I'd hate to be in a situation where another officer got injured because of my tactics or my partners, or anybody in any agency because of bad tactics. It's got to be a terrible feeling to go home at night and second guess yourself, boy, this guy could still be walking around tomorrow on a beat, or he wouldn't be laying in a hospital, his wife and kids, all because of my bad tactics and my bad judgment.
Lines. A gang wielding weapons, including a machine gun, attacked riders 4 separate times. Channel 2's Chris Borgen has details live from the 96th Street subway station. Chris?
You know, the police have said that with so many guns upstairs on the street in the hands of robbers and muggers and what you will, it was only a matter of time before those guns would arrive downstairs. And apparently this Saturday night they did just that. Those guns in the hands of a gang, turning the New York City subway system into a remake of the Great Train Robbery.
It was kind of a disorganized group that picked up people on the way to participate, and others dropped out.
The gun-toting gang began its robbery run 11:30 p.m., the number 2 train southbound from 110th Street. The gang, said to be 3 to 8 teenagers in number, announced a stick-up, flashing their weapons, a silver handgun, and what was described as a machine gun to punctuate their command to give it up. The terrorized passengers did just that, the gunmen taking the cash and the jewelry, handing back the empty wallets and handbags. The gunmen then got off the number 2 train here at 96th Street and boarded a northbound number 1. And there they began their second hold-up trip as the train made its run all the way to 125th Street, where, once again, the gun-toting gang got off and boarded their third train of the night, a southbound number 1. Here, they repeated their routine, flashing that machine gun, so-called, announcing a stick-up, grabbing money and jewelry, getting off the train as it arrived back at 96th Street. Then for the fourth and final robbery, the gun-toting gang, for some reason, left 96th Street and this side, going all the way back downtown to 59th Street, where they crossed over and took the A train north and committed their final robbery 1:40 a.m. somewhere between 145th and 168th Streets. 4 train robberies in less than 3 hours, but surprisingly, only 6 of the estimated dozens of hold-up victims reported the robbery to the transit police, saying the gang had some kind of machine gun, a Tech-9, a Mac-10, a Uzi, or something like that.
The average subway rider who is not a criminal doesn't know the first thing about weaponry. They couldn't tell you the difference between a Mac-10 machine gun and a Big Mac, and just no difference.
A so-called machine gun-toting gang on the New York City subways. To the intrepid New Yorker, so what's new?
That happens every day.
Nothing new, huh?
No, not at all.
It's a crazy, unpredictable world. You never know what's going to happen.
That is happening in this city almost every day. The safety in this city is terrible.
The consensus of opinion is the gun that was being waved about was in fact a Tech-9. A Tech-9 is a semi-automatic weapon, which means that it only fires every time you pull the trigger. You must pull the trigger each time for firing. Up in Albany, Governor Cuomo went on the record of saying that because of this that happened last weekend, it should give more grit to his cry that the legislature should step forward with laws banning all, well, automatic, semi-automatic, what they call assault weapons in New York State. Live at 96th Street Broadway, I'm Chris Borgen. Back to you in studio.
On the subway, and if they continue to be readily available and used on the street, then the subway system is not immune. We are likely to see it again.
The police are adding extra patrols, but so far there have been no arrests in the Tech-9 robbery.
145th. Police say the bandits held entire subway cars hostage as they stripped the riders of their cash and jewelry. And what shocked people and horrified the passengers was that robbers were toting semi-automatic assault guns like these, demonstrated by a weapons expert. Fortunately, nobody was injured.
From prison, only to allegedly do it again twice yesterday. 38-year-old Lou Ellis was picked up last night and charged with attempted murder. She's accused of pushing a man onto the tracks at the 110th Street station in Manhattan and then shoving a woman at the 96th Street station just 20 minutes later.
The public gets outraged by this sort of thing. The subways are the lifeline of New York City. We can't have people wandering around, shoving other people onto subway tracks, and then being released on a signature-only bail.
Good Samaritans on the subway platform rescued the 2 people. They're now both hospitalized.
He tried to shoot my brother in the head, but he missed. I had to fight him or I wouldn't be alive today.
The victim did not want his face to appear on camera for reasons of identification. His family is hoping witnesses will step forward to help police in the investigation.
Slipped through their fingers. 2 people narrowly escaped serious injury or even death thanks to the help of passers-by. Just last week, Ellis was charged with doing the same thing. Paul Ferranges is standing by at the subway station where one of the most recent attacks occurred. Paul?
Good evening, Lewis. I'm here at 110th Street and Lenox Avenue where Lou Ellis first pushed a man in front of the subway. It's an incident that's had riders thinking not only about whether or not the trains are going to be on time, but surely more riders are thinking about their safety today. It was shortly after 2:30 Wednesday afternoon. 32-year-old Luis Arguerdo was waiting on the 110th Street platform for a Manhattan-bound train. Suddenly, he was on the track bed, pushed from behind without warning as the train approached the station. Luckily, passengers came to his aid.
I was shocked. I mean, it totally, you hear about things like that, but, actually, it's not something that you normally see every day. But you hear about people being pushed on the track. It shocked me. It just totally shocked me, to actually see it.
What was the first thing that ran through your mind?
I went blank. I mean, I wasn't thinking anything except for the fact I was shocked that she did that. And then my next thought was to help the person out of the train, off the track, to see if they was all right.
As Johnson helped Arguerdo to the platform, transit police used flashlights to warn the motorman of the oncoming train to slow down his train. Meanwhile, the pusher, identified by police as 38-year-old Mary Lou Ellis, fled the scene. But she didn't go far. 20 minutes later, she was here at the 96th Street station, where she allegedly, according to police, pushed 31-year-old Wee Chang to the track bed in what police say wasn't just a simple assault.
Well, in the second incident at 96th Street, witnesses along with uniformed transit police officers overheard the culprit state that she did it because the woman was white. And after consulting with our duty captain, it was decided to put it in that category.
Ellis is no stranger to law enforcement. Since 1973, she's been arrested 16 times. The last time was in May, where again she pushed another strap hanger, a Hispanic woman, in front of an oncoming train on May 7th, again at 110th Street. Only this strap hanger was lucky. Instead of hitting the track bed, she bounced off the train and wasn't injured. But Ellis was released from jail on that charge earlier this month, on her own recognizance. The Manhattan DA says Ellis was found fit after psychiatric evaluation. Whether or not Mary Lou Ellis is in fact fit to be walking the streets remains to be seen. Now, in addition to the bias charge, she's been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of reckless endangerment. Reporting from 110th Street and Lenox Avenue, Paul Floranges, back to you in the newsroom.
All right, thank you very much, Paul. That's New York One's Paul Floranges.
Miller has more.
At 9:30 this morning, there was gunfire on the elevated tracks. It came with no warning. In seconds, 2 men were dead. Another was barely clinging to life. Transit Police Chief Michael O'Connor raced to the scene and then to the hospital with Mayor Dinkins.
We believe one of the employees, emotionally disturbed at that point, fired at 2 of the other employees. One of the wounds was fatal. One of the employees is here at this point being treated and then took his own life.
John O'Brien, the gunman, worked on a 4-man power crew for the Transit Authority. He had a bad stutter, according to friends. He told co-workers he thought it might get him a bad work evaluation and that he might lose his job.
He thought he was going to get a bad report from the foreman.
Because of speech?
Yeah.
And you know Gus, what's he like?
The foreman. He's a very mild person, very easygoing.
The only eyewitness, the only survivor, Foreman Gus Moscatello told detectives all O'Brien said before he started shooting was, quote, "I have emotional problems," unquote. Then he opened fire on his foreman and his partners before turning the gun on himself.
There was a man up there moaning, and the guy asked him what was wrong, and he said, "I've been shot, get help." And then the guy ran into the building to get help.
The 3 men involved in the shooting today were part of a 4-man team. One of the members of their team wasn't around for the gunfire. He was sent down early this morning to pick up their paychecks. He probably feels like the luckiest man in the Bronx today. John Miller, News 4, the Bronx.
And a transit worker. They say he fired 6 shots, 3 of them at his supervisor, August Moscatello. It happened on the platform behind me in an enclosed area, and apparently nobody